start the recording. The Father's Masterclass series is an idea that has come to its time. An idea that started many, many years ago. It is an idea that is rooted and grounded in my own story, my own journey. A story which I have documented in part in one of my more recent books, I Love Me, 30 Days to Greater Self-Love, the story of my own journey of healing and recovery from the father wound, something that we will explore very in much detail over the course of the series. Part of the healing process of that wound involved me coming to a place of recognition that my own story of the father wound would be entirely wasted if I did not utilize various media and various platforms that are available to share that story, not to bring any kind of public attention to my own father and to my own wound, but rather to seek to share that story with a view to helping others whose story might be similar. Not in terms of the details, but in terms of the shared experience of being afflicted by the father wound and the story of hope of what is possible by way of having that wound healed and the impact that that stands to serve future generations in my own specific generation, as well as that of others who, as they are healed of their own wound, are able to put a stop to the cycle in their own family and help others to be able to do the same. In time and at the right time, which is here and now this evening, part of that purpose, part of that vision is unfolding as we commence the series of masterclasses, seeking to reverse the curse of fatherlessness, seeking to light a candle in the dark instead of cursing the darkness. As God would have it, the journey of my life involved a program of study in 2009 on the African continent, in the nation of the Republic of South Africa to be exact, at the African Leadership Institute for Community Transformation, now renamed to the Institute for Transformational Leadership, which provided the opportunity to sit at the feet of the founder of that institution, Cassie Casterns, and his team. As we were being shaped as young leaders to impact our world by transforming community, by becoming trained experts in the field of community transformation, founded upon biblical principles, it was necessary for us to confront our own issues. And recognizing the organizers of that training, recognizing the commonality, the prevalence of fatherlessness around the world, we focused heavily on that because of the role that it played in the societal ills that anyone who is desirous and serious of transforming communities would need to confront. So that was my first formal exposure to focusing on fatherlessness as a key success factor in transforming societies. Cassie would then go on to produce a number of curricula, including curricula for sports, using sports as a vehicle for community transformation. Again, in that curriculum, a very heavy, intentionally so, a very heavy focus was placed on fatherlessness. And then ultimately, all of that material, all of that experience gained through the Institute for Community Transformation, through the Institute for Sports Leaders Transformation. Those material, those experiences, those expertise were crystallized into a curriculum specifically to treat with fatherlessness. That curriculum was titled, "The World Needs a Father." And I was privileged to be one of the persons from the Caribbean, a number of persons from the Caribbean, who were trained to be trainers using that curriculum. The world needs a father. So this is the main material that I'll be using over the period of hosting these webinars, interlaced with my own story, interlaced with stories of the experiences that I have encountered over the years as a pastor, as a guidance counselor, as a marriage counselor, as a premarital counselor, as a practitioner of community transformation. Over the years of working very, very closely with persons in various inner city communities across Jamaica. Experiences gained by doing youth work in various communities across the Caribbean, on the European continent, on the North American continent, and on the continent of Africa. Seeking to pull all of this together, to seek to commence a process that I hope to be a revolutionary process, because I am particularly passionate about this issue of fatherlessness that plagues our region. And I'm particularly passionate about the power of reversing those ills by men who are not afraid to confront their own woundedness, so that their own efforts at fathering can receive an upgrade, whether it is that they are fathering their biological children, or they are acting in the role of a spiritual father, the role of a mentor, the role of a discipler, the role of a teacher, the role of a coach, but seeking to call men to an upgrade to the place where we once were. Operating from a definitive standpoint framework of redemption as that which was once in place, that was taken out of place, being restored to its rightful place. So it is about redeeming our men, helping our men to get back to their rightful place, the place that they once were, the place of leadership, the place of stewardship. where we are not now helping to get us back to that rightful place. So this is the background, this is the backdrop to this series that I welcome you to. I'm gonna share for just about 50 or so minutes the plenary of the presentation for the webinar. Thanks, Wade, for the feedback. You can utilize the chat section to just give feedback as I go along. But I invite you to make note of your questions. And then at the end, after the plenary presentation, I'm gonna allow for about half an hour or so for your questions and comments, further comments, as we would have a bit of a little discussion section at the end. So just allow me to just go through the presentation. Please make your notes, jot down your questions so you don't forget. And then I will allow time for those at the end of the presentation. I want to start, therefore, with us listening to another song, and I'll take maybe just a couple of minutes of feedback from you, just in terms of your reaction to the song. All right. So the song is titled Little White I got it? Do I got it? Do I got it? All right. Let me get that up for you. The song is entitled Little White Lie by Tanya Stevens. Okay, here we go. I got it here. Let me put that up on screen for you. Share sound, optimize, share. There we go. All right, there we go. Okay, yeah. So just remember, let's keep the mics muted once we are not speaking, so we minimize the background noises and distractions. Yes. All right. So any thoughts? What's your reaction? Any thoughts that came to mind? And this is, of course, just, I just want to hear what thoughts came to mind as you listen to the song. Anyone wants to just give a quick feedback? Welcome, Delroy.
All right, good evening.
Yes, greetings, Wade.
Yes, it's the first I'm hearing this song.
All right. Yeah,
I've always heard
it's
about
from Tanya's, the album is Gangsta Blues.
Okay.
This has some rough edges on it, but some of the songs are very, very solid and thought-provoking social commentary. This one in particular. And there's another one that you should check out. So that one is, oh my gosh, I soon tell you. But yeah, Gangsta Blues by Tanya Stevens.
Yes, and I tell you, I'd appreciate the lyrics because, the content was deep. I'm not really sure the message. So if you could just give a summary of what she was saying, what she's trying to live with, because, yeah, I want to get the full impact.
Okay, right. So
maybe before you say it, maybe we can add my piece.
Yes, go ahead, Jeremy.
Right. I would have been in a similar situation like what Tanya is talking about back in my college days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I know she's telling that there's a jacket anon.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Indeed. It's the first I'm hearing this song too.
Yes.
But
yes.
The white lies is somebody when they're ready to do the DNA test to go firing, it will come out.
Right. Interesting. Thanks for that self-disclosure, Jeremy. Appreciate that. All right. So Delroy, I think you came on while the song was already started. Not sure how much of it you caught. Any thoughts? Okay. All right. So Wade, as Jermaine said, it's a jacket situation. And you know how the world has this way of softening certain things and trying to make them a little more palatable by using the term white. So a white lie is usually a lie that is considered to be not a big lie. So the song is titled Little White Lie. And it is reenacting what is turning out to be quite a common scenario, as Jermaine intimated, where the United States Embassy in particular has been revealing information that the DNA test that they require when persons are being filed for, it is indicating a very interesting statistic that a number of our men are discovering at that point that they were jacketed, that they were given a child by a woman that is not their child. So the lady in the song, the character in the song, is tucking the child in, and she is musing over what she has done. So she knows that the father that she has given to the child is not the child's father. And she's saying, like, when she sees the emotions on his face when he looks at the child, at the girl, fully convinced that it is his child. But the mother knows that it is not his child. And then the mother is saying, it would tear him apart. She knows how much it would tear him apart if he finds out the truth. So she says, in this case, what daddy doesn't know can't hurt him. So that's essentially what's the storyline behind the song. All right, and as I indicated, the statistics coming out is rather alarming, because what it is saying is that traditionally Jamaican men in particular have always been cussed out, saying that Jamaican men are wild. But of course, if such a high percentage, as the embassy is indicating, of women have given fatherhood to a man who is not the child's father, what does it say about the sexual promiscuity of the women as well? And I took us in that direction to begin with, because here is an often overlooked aspect of this whole phenomenon of fatherlessness. Absolutely, Wade. Two sides of the coin. Two sides of the same coin. Both the wildness, the sowing of oats of the men, and now what is emerging, backed by the data, the wildness of the females. And of course, there can be many antecedent factors that can be said to have led these women to be maybe equally promiscuous. Some are of the view that maybe in fact the women are even more promiscuous than the men. But of course, that's a moot point. Last Sunday was Father's Day, and I conducted a wedding ceremony. The man is pushing up towards 60. Welcome, Fs. The man is pushing up towards 60, and the bride approaching 50. What was significant about it was that at the end of the little ceremony, a very small private ceremony, the bride made some remarks, and then it was the turn of the groom to give some remarks. But before we got there, when I was completing the writing up of the marriage register, there is a column in the marriage register for father's name. Now, our instructions from the RGD, as required by the Marriage Act, as marriage officers, is that where the father's name is not on the birth certificate, we are to find out the name of the father from the person. But before we enter that name in the marriage register, which becomes a legal record, we should have the individual write a statement. For example, I, Teddy A. Jones, declare that the name of my father is John Bartholomew. And I would date it and sign it. Now, this is important because, for example, there are different instances where a person's identity needs to be officially determined. And one of the documents that may be used in making such a determination is the marriage register. Now, as the marriage officer, if I submit a document that says the father of Teddy Jones is John Brown, it therefore means that the authorities can expect to act on that information, to make a declaration that Teddy Jones's father is John Brown. Now, if it turns out that that is not the person's father, it means that the marriage officer would have submitted false information to the government's official registrar of records. That's the RGD. So it is important that we don't take hearsay, that is what the person says, but what the person declares by writing and affix their signature to. It gets a little more interesting when the person says, I didn't grow with a father, or me no know my father. What do we do in such a situation? It means that the entry has to say unknown. But of course, the person has to declare that. So the declaration would be, I, Teddy A. Jones, declare that the name of my father is unknown to me. And that was the case with this particular wedding. So the man had declared that the father's name is unknown. When he was giving his remarks at the end of the ceremony, he started speaking and then he began to tear up. Remember I said the man is almost 60. And he's speaking and he's beginning to tear up. His eyes filling up with tears. And he says, I did not grow with my father. I never knew the man. But I am very happy that today, as I took my marital vows, my son, my only son, is here to witness me take this important step. No. I am one of those pretty emotional ones when it comes on to certain things. And I confess to you, I had to fight back the tears. Because the significance of the moment, the fact that it was on Father's Day that he's getting married, and him not having known his father, he is expressing how joyful he is that on this Father's Day of 2021, he is getting married and his son is present to witness this act. What is this fatherlessness that we are talking about that confronts us? How can it be described? In the promotional material for the webinar, I described it as a curse. Why did I describe it as such? I described it as such because that is exactly what is connected to it from a biblical standpoint. And I'll show you why in just a moment. So here is, I'm going to be just going through different sections of the master curriculum. The world needs a father, as I indicated, right? The world needs a father. The master curriculum. The world needs a father. Master mentor course. In the first chapter is titled "Satan Came to Earth, Sir." A quote from this man in this picture, the adult in this picture. His son has just been slain by a gang leader.
Is that a blur? No?
Okay, let me see. All right, here. Okay, thanks for that. Let me try to correct that. Put it this way. This should get it better for us. Is it better now?
Is the writing? We can't see the writing.
All right. Yeah. Don't worry too much about that. I'll read it for us. But you're able to see the image, yes?
Yes.
All right. Great. Yes. Thanks. So his son has just been slain, and he takes up the lifeless body of his son. Gang violence. And you can see the sheer pain on his face. And a reporter who happened to be on the scene tried talking to him for a comment. I mean, that's about the worst time for a journalist to ask you for a comment, right? And his only response was, "Satan came to earth, sir." Now, of course, it turns out that when the social inquiry was done into the background of the gang leader who had slain his son, it turned out that that gang leader had a history of fatherlessness. The text that is on the picture says, is Malachi chapter 4 and verse 6, an Old Testament book. Verse 6 of chapter 4 of the book of Malachi, which says, he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse. Now, it tells us that even back then in the Old Testament times of the Bible, when the prophet Malachi was speaking, this is a prophecy about the ministry and work of John the Baptist, who fulfilled this prophecy. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse, says God. And so there is a curse associated with fatherlessness, the estranged relationship between fathers and sons. And part of the ministry of John the Baptist was to bring about healing to those relationships. So John the Baptist had 3 things to do, according to Luke chapter 1 and verse 17, where the fulfillment of this prophecy is indicated. We're only concerned here now with the first, to turn the hearts of the fathers to their children. And of course, the cognate applies, the hearts of the children to their fathers. When the prophecy was spoken, it says, if that does not happen, where that is not happening, the land is struck with a curse. So I extrapolate from that here in Jamaica, where we have rampant fatherlessness, and of course, this dates back to the plantation era in the Caribbean, when our forefathers, who were themselves uprooted from their own families on the continent of Africa, taken to the Caribbean on the plantations, and systematically stripped, separated, dislocated from their families, sold from one plantation to another. When the boys were born on the plantation, as soon as they got to teenage years, they were whisked away. As they grew older, some of them were turned into breeders, literally breeders, just like how a horse trainer will have stallions that are kept for breeding purposes only. So there is a strong sociological antecedent to this. This is where the whole matrifocal slant of our families began. That's the Caribbean reality. In Latin America, in Southern Asia, in North America, in Europe, literally on every continent of the world, the reality is the same. The antecedents may be different, but the current reality is the same. There is a global pandemic of fatherlessness. So chapter 2 of the manual is titled, The Cry of the Children. Research on the curse of fatherlessness indicates, among other things, one in particular from Stefan Baskerville of Howard University, who says virtually every major pathology has been linked to fatherlessness. Violent crime, drug and alcohol abuse, teenage pregnancy, suicide, all correlate more strongly to fatherlessness than any other single factor. Now, I hear the theory, the work, the notable work, which led to the book titled "My Mother Who Fathered Me." I have no problem with the fact, as I indicated. I am very aware of the plantation era as an antecedent to our matrifocal families. I salute the grandmothers and the mothers who single-handedly raise their children and those who turn out well. But what I find a bit discomforting and disconcerting is what seems to be an effort to downplay the research, the evidence-based conclusion that we have a serious problem of fatherlessness in the Caribbean. A couple of years ago, the RGD, in recognizing this and in an effort to try to do something about it, put out a release to pregnant mothers. If you place the name of the child's father on the registration at the hospital when the child is born, we will give you 2 extra copies of the child's birth certificate free as an inducement to try to get mothers to place the name of the child's father on the birth certificate. Now, when you look at some of the last names that some children have been given, you are led to speculate as to whether this is an actual person's name or whether this is not just some made-up name. And the RGD registrars have indicated that in some cases they have actually been told by the mothers that since una say una want a name, we're gonna make up one name. Why? It is either they literally do not know who the father is, or they feel that there are compelling reasons for them not to want the child to carry the name of the man who actually impregnated them. Many of our men feel that have convinced themselves that it is quite okay to vanish like a snow cone in the sun the moment they discover that they have impregnated a woman. And so we have this situation on our hands globally. Research in many countries over the last 5 years has shown that dysfunctional family life is the biggest problem in the world. And fatherlessness is at the center of the problem of dysfunctional family life. Whichever way you want to dice it, whichever way you want to spin it, if we are honest with ourselves, we will come to the conclusion and realization and admission that fatherlessness is at the center of dysfunctional family life. And that in our country in particular, dysfunctional family life is one of the biggest problems. At the global level, the concerns that emerged as the top concerns or issues: family, corruption, education, and lack of moral values. And again, all of those can be drilled down to the lowest common denominator of fatherlessness. What's happening as far as sociological problems are concerned? The data is indicating and revealing that men are responsible for most of the societal upheaval. Here are some of the statistics. Men commit 90% of the major crimes. Men commit nearly 100% of rapes, 95% of burglaries, 91% of the offenses against the family, and 94% of drunk drivers are men. Research by Robert Lewis. More research. this time pulled from the website www.fathersforlife.org. You can make a note of that and check out the website. Fathers for Life, F-O-R, fathersforlife.org. 63% of suicides come from fatherless homes. That's almost 6.5 out of every 10. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. In 2000 and around about 2012, myself and a colleague, we were contracted as life coaches for an intervention that was being done by an organization called the Back to Life Foundation. And we were contracted as the life coaches on that initiative at the Rio Cobre Juvenile Correctional Facility. We spoke with the young men who were incarcerated at Rio Cobre, and every last one of them, the youngest was 9, the oldest was 17. They were in there for issues ranging from what the court had described as being uncontrollable. Live with your grandmother and your hotties, you're not here. Grandma says she can't control the boy, take him to family court, and the court deemed him to be uncontrollable and sent him to Rio Cobre. Ranging from that to actual murder, to burglaries, to break-ins, to wounding with intent, to possession of illegal possession of firearm, the whole range. And every one of them that we interfaced with in there, every one, 100% of them came from homes where there was no father, or in the cases of 2 of them where the father was present, one of them, the father was physically present, but absolutely disconnected relationally and emotionally, and or violently abusive. One of them said his father tied him upside down with a rope on an ackee tree and used an ackee, broke off an ackee branch and used it to beat him in his head and in his back with the ackee branch. The other one said, sir, before the police got to me, I stashed away my .38 revolver. Only me know which part it is, sir. And he said, sir, do you know what keeps me alive in here? Do you know why I try my best to stay alive in here? Because every night you have to sleep with one eye open and one eye closed. Otherwise, the boys them go and shiv you. That is, use some sharp object and stab you. He says, why am I alive? I make sure to stay alive, and I count every day that brings me closer to my release, because the moment I get out of here, I am going to go and retrieve my .38 revolver. And the first thing I am going to do is to go and look for my father and empty the revolver in his chest. The rage was palpable. We have to sermon every ounce of training of our emotional intelligence and training not to just break down, just hearing him say those words. The RGD has put out the data in terms of the number of the percentages of children who, right here in Jamaica, who do not live with their father. So the data is telling us that further, 71% of children who do not finish school come from fatherless homes. Right? And there's a correlation, and see there seems to be a correlation emerging as the data is analyzed between fatherlessness and the rate of divorce as well. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of data for the Jamaica situation. What we do know though is that we have an alarmingly high level of divorce here in Jamaica. But look at what is there. For example, in Russia, in Moscow, church leaders estimate that the divorce rate is at 87%. Among the Xhosa tribe in South Africa, children go to the grandmother if the husband wants a new wife without children. What are some of the effects of the involvement of the fathers? So we see what happens when the father is not involved. What happens when the father is actually involved? You know, sometimes we present the statistics on the negative side and forget to look at what happens on the positive side. So I want to mention some of them. And this here now is from the findings from the Father Involvement Research Alliance report, led by Sarah Allen, Dr. Sarah Allen, and Dr. Karen Daly from the University of Guelph. That's University of Guelph in Toronto, Canada. The effects of father involvement. Why am I sharing this with us? Both sides. The negative, what the statistics are saying about the negative results when fathers are of fatherlessness. But here now, what happens when a father is involved in the life of his children? Let's look firstly at, I'm going to just run through this quickly. Let's look firstly, start firstly with the, 1 second. In terms of cognitive development. Infants of highly involved fathers are more cognitively competent at age 6. No, that's a biggie. You want your child to begin from early to be cognitively competent in order to have the mental capacity to be brilliant, to do well at school. Be involved in the life of the child. Further on, we're going to see what are the most critical years in terms of father impact versus which years are more significant in terms of the impact of the peer group. Right? These things have been nailed down and narrowed down to a science for us to pay attention, with the intent for us to pay attention. Further, school-aged children of involved fathers are also better academic achievers overall. Here's an interesting one. Fathers' talk with toddlers is characterized by more of the WH kinds of words. What, where, when, who. Those questions which require children to assume more communicative responsibility in the interaction. What does this say? As men, in terms of our communication with toddlers, we tend to use more of these words. Who, when, what, where. The inquiry questions. The kinds of questions that stimulate more communicative responsibility. And that is part of what the science is saying, that this is part of what leads to this higher level of cognitive functioning with children who have the fathers involved early in their lives. They are better problem solvers as toddlers and have a higher IQ as early as age 3, where the father is involved. Now, this is some really interesting research. And if you can begin to imagine, think about the spread in our Jamaican society and look at the cycle, the vicious cycle of what the distribution tends to be of father presence and involvement in homes across across the geography of our cities, for example. And if we are saying that the presence of the father has a direct bearing on the child's cognitive development, I hope you're beginning to see the connection between that and the kinds of cognitive abilities that children are demonstrating in a kind of general way relative to their places of abode. And this is by no means intended to stigmatize any particular communities. Because of course, as with everything else, there are exceptions. But look at the correlations. The overall environment is going to be far more stressful. And everything is connected. So there is the impact on the cognitive development. In terms of emotional development, children with involved fathers usually display a greater tolerance for and ability to handle strange, stressful, and frustrating situations. It stands to reason. The very presence of the father is an indication of stability. At that age and stage where the child is seeking and the reassurance of security and safety is so important. So naturally, where the father is present emotionally, such children experience less emotional distress. They display fewer expressions of negative emotionality, such as fear and guilt. That's on the emotional side. Socially, fewer conduct problems, fewer psychological distress, a greater sense of social competence, and higher levels of self-reported happiness. That sense of the child saying that they are happy or they feel happy. Fewer anxiety symptoms and lower neuroticisms, neurotic problems, neurotic issues, mental breakdowns, in other words. Listen to this one. Children of involved fathers are more likely to demonstrate a greater internal locus of control. They have a greater ability to take initiative, use self-direction and control, and display less impulsivity. Right? A greater internal locus of control. In other words, they have a greater sense of that internal force that inhibits them from doing things that ought not to be done. That stop factor. One of the things the police force has been indicating for a number of years now is that they are finding that where there are children and teenagers involved in gang activity, where gang violence is executed, they are indicating that among the men, among those who participated in the execution of the gang violence, the greater level of violence was conducted by the younger members of the gang. I am a living testament of that. When I was held up at gunpoint in 2008, the two men who came into the yard, the older one had the gun. The younger one was unarmed. They cleaned out the car, took what they were taking, and went through the gate. when I thought they were gone, the younger one, the boy who couldn't have been more than 15, he returned, came back into the yard and punched me in the jaw. It was not enough for him that they had taken what they wanted to take and just left without harming me. So he was the one who returned into the yard and punched me in the face. And to this day, I am grateful that he was not armed with a gun or a knife. It might have ended very differently if he was armed accordingly. So that's on the social side. We're talking about father involvement, the benefits of father involvement. For those of us here on this webinar, if you're a father, a biological father, let's start with you. My end game for this evening, in this, the first of the series, is to challenge us, if you are involved, to get more involved. If you are not involved, the old folks say it is never too late for a shower of rain. Get involved, be present, become present, start, make a start. Make that connection, bridge the gap. It might be difficult and awkward at first, but get involved. Become present. And if you are not a biological father, but you are in a sphere of influence, I know Wade, you are in the education system, and as a teacher, as an educator, in many respects, you have many children. And I know you're doing some of that as well. And I'm very glad for people like yourself who are helping to bridge some of that gap, because in many respects, the only male positive, wholesome male presence that some of these children have would be the male teachers at their schools. So let me just there's so much more in terms of the social. Right? Children who have involved fathers are more likely to grow up to be tolerant and understanding, to be well socialized and successful adults, to have supportive social networks consisting of long-term close friendships. They have long-term successful marriages. They tend to be satisfied with their romantic partners in midlife. And they have more successful, intimate relationships. Just about every facet of our lives are impacted by having an involved father. Physical development, likewise. Okay? Listen to this. Children who live without their fathers are more likely to experience health-related problems. Even health-related problems. I found this very interesting, this part of the research. Children who live apart from their fathers are more likely to be diagnosed with asthma, even after taking into account demographic and socioeconomic conditions. Now, of course, this is not saying that if you don't live with your father or you didn't grow up with your father, you're gonna be diagnosed with asthma. No. But what the research is saying, that they found a very interesting correlation between children who lived apart from their fathers and the likelihood of being diagnosed with asthma. Unmarried cohabiting parents and unmarried parents living apart are 1.76 and 2.6 times respectively more likely to have their child diagnosed with asthma. Very interesting stuff. All right, and then I want to close off with this aspect here of spiritual development. And then we'll take some questions and have some discussion, and we'll wrap up the webinar. Spiritual development. Listen to this. I want you to listen to this section very, very closely. The image of God, this is now father presence, father involvement, and the spiritual development of children. The image of God that children have at 6 years old is derived from the image they carry of their own father. Again, research, data-backed findings. So, the absent father portrays an absent God. The disconnected father portrays a disconnected God. Remember, what age? 6 years old. And I think you know that the first 6 years of a human's life are the most critical years in terms of the formation of the overall temperament, of the overall emotional, psychological makeup of that child, of that individual. The disconnected father portrays a disconnected God. The permissive father portrays a permissive God. That is the father who just allow you up for doing your own thing. The father who doesn't exercise any boundaries, any measures of control, any locus of control. The neglecting father portrays a neglecting God. The emotional father portrays an emotional God. Based on all of this, listen to this. We fathers, we men, we are God with skin on for our children. In the eyes of our children, we are God with skin on. And guess what? God designed it to be that way. God intended it to be that way. In the Bible, the word of the many words that are used to describe God and to create a symbol, a mental model, a mental picture of God. The single word that is used most often is the word Father. And it is a word that is introduced to us primarily in the New Testament. Deliberately so. That the word that God revealed himself as in the scriptures most frequently is the word Father. It therefore means that the role, the way a child sees or does not see their father up to age 6 is what this slide is portraying here, is largely going to shape how that child understands the concept of God. This is very, very significant. And this is why when Jesus' disciples asked him to teach them how to pray, the very first word that he used in responding is the word Father. It would appear as the second word in English, Luke chapter 11, what we call the Lord's Prayer. It would appear as the second word in English, but it's actually one word in Greek, in terms of the structure of the Greek grammar. So it is the word Father. So in the Greek, it is Father of us, which of course translates into English as our Father. So in the Greek, it is, the word is in the form of the possessive, the genitive, in terms of the Greek grammar. So it is just the word Father, but in terms of the grammatical structure of the word, it is the possessive, the plural possessive. So when translating into English, it is translated as our Father, the Father of us. But it's the word Father. Isn't that significant? That Jesus is teaching us how to talk to God, and the very first word that he wants us to use is Father. He wants us to understand that we should relate, we should communicate, which is what prayer is, talking with God, communication with God, with at the very forefront and side and back of our minds that God is our Father. And he's revealed in scripture as a caring father, as a capable father, as a consistent father. Everything that the man that God made in his image and in his likeness is supposed to represent to his child and in the life of his child. Now, when the father is physically absent, it means that there is a significant deficit. Which is why the Bible is so strong in its condemnation and its calling out of a man who, for example, will not provide for his children. Paul uses a very strong word, an infidel. A man who does not provide for his family is an infidel. It was one of the strongest derogatory, condemnatory words available in Paul's day. Is what we would call today, you're worthless. But I am not here to curse the darkness, as I said in this series. I am here to strike a match, to light a candle, to call our men back to our rightful place. Something has gone terribly wrong in the mindset and in the psyche, in the soul of our Jamaican men who are not standing up to their responsibility to provide for their children, who are not standing up to their responsibility to be present emotionally and spiritually and cognitively in the life of their children. And we have to rescue our men. We have to rescue our men from themselves. And part of it is going to be us leading a revolution of living by example and leading by example. A man must never be comfortable and settled when he is not able to take care of his family. And too many of our men are just comfortable with it and are nothing. The laziness and the just going through life, waiting for life to happen. And with all the excuses, yeah, just so the thing set. No, and not so the thing set. We must set the thing and not let the thing set us. And just be reactive and responsive. We must make something happen. Use our brain, use our creative ability. Think, innovate, do something. Because that's who we are made to be. We are to be providers, and we are to be the protectors and the armor bearers and the shields and the ones to nurture and mold the generations. And understand that we are not just raising children, but we are called to raise an army, to raise soldiers, to raise men of virtue, men who will stand and men who will take their place, and men who will continue to carry on our legacy. So this is chapter 1 and chapter 2. Well, chapter 1 is very short. Simply, Satan came to earth. There is this curse upon our land as a result of fatherlessness. And we are seeking to establish by demonstrating what the research is indicating as to the damaging, debilitating social upheavals that result when men are absent in the lives of their children. And we are lighting a candle to show the glow, the hope, the light that is present when men are physically and emotionally and relationally present and connected to their children as they ought to. Over the course of the other installments in the series, we will look at the various stages, for example, of the life of a man and the life of a boy and what is important at every stage. And as I close, God himself demonstrated, modeled this in terms of the physical son, Jesus being on earth, where on 2 occasions, the words of God demonstrate God's fatherly role, understanding the importance of these 3 elements. First, at the baptism of Jesus, the voice came from heaven saying, "This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased." Ownership, this is my son. He didn't deny Jesus. He didn't remove himself from his son, as so many of our fathers are doing. This is my boy. This is my pick-me. And it's not just to say it because you can get a ratings or get a forward from your brethren, as so many of our men are doing, where they're beating up them chest and I talk about you are my youth, this, and I mean get 5 youth, and you can't even call them name. You don't even know them name. You only know, say you have 5 youth. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about ownership, where you understand you are owning the responsibility. You are living up to your responsibility. You are present. Ownership. This is my son, said the voice of the Father from the clouds, in whom I am well pleased. Affirmation, a public affirmation, a public commendation. Because children need that. They need, a boy especially, needs to hear from his father that he's doing well, that his father is proud of him. So a man must not be afraid to publicly demonstrate and even be emotional about it, that this is my son and my son is doing well. I accept you, I rate you. And then the second occasion, when Jesus was transfigured on the mount before Peter, James, and John, the voice came from the cloud, this is my beloved son. Oh, and then of course, they're publicly demonstrating and affirming love for his son, my beloved son, my son that I love, which he repeated at the transfiguration. This is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. And then he added another element, listen to him. Public affirmation, publicly leveraging his authority. Listen to him. He is worthy of being followed. Yeah? He has what it takes. Fathers, we have a unique opportunity to reverse this curse that is upon our land. Men, whether we are biological fathers or spiritual fathers, or mentors, or coach, or teacher, but if you're a man, I want you to understand that part of your purpose on God's planet is way more than just taking up oxygen, more way than just merely existing, but it is about shaping lives. Standing in a position of immense influence and discharging your responsibility under God.